What's up, people? This is the Solar Kid, and this is my podcast. It's called The Other Side of the Sun. Today, I have a very special guest with me. His name is Geoffrey Kweku Richardson, Kweksons, or Big Daddy G to me. I've known him for a very long time since I came to London. He was probably my first bass teacher. Taught me how to play some bass, taught me music production. We used to make music back in the day in his little studio and in his house. And yeah, he's been a great mentor of mine and a big influence on my music. I'd like to introduce Geoffrey Kweku Richardson, Kweksons, Big Daddy G. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself in a couple of words? And yeah, just who you are, what you've done, that kind of stuff. And if you can just hold your camera back a bit so we can see your face, that would be good. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, well, Keenan, it's nice to see you, guy. And you know I'm fresh in this kind of stuff, so if I make any mistake, that's cool.
No
We
mistakes.
carry on.
It's live. It's cool.
Carry on. As you said, we've known each other for quite a while, and we have no bad vibes between any of us at all. We're just the best of buddies, if that's the right word, right? And yeah, well, I've been here a long time and been through all kinds of things, seen them all, done them all, and we're still here, and we're hoping for things to improve, and maybe one day, as things improve, we'll all be together as one nation. Like in the 60s, we used to have a record called A Great Big Melting Pot, and it went to number one, that one, if my memory serves me right, in the 60s. And that's what we need, a great big melting pot where all the peoples of the world get together and do all this, for instance, talk to each other and hear what's going on, so here I am, man,
Can you just tell the people like a little bit about what you did in the 60s, what kind of stuff you were into, what you used to do back then, you know what I mean?
Oh, well, I was born in the Gold Coast, which is in West Africa. It's now called Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I was born. And I came here before it became Ghana. And I went to school here and everything. And then I grew up. And all I wanted to do in my whole life was to play bass.
Yeah, man.
I didn't even, if somebody said to me, there's a piano, go and play it. I said, no, give me the bass. That's all I ever wanted to do. But as I grew older, I learned about music and I enjoyed music. I remember the first song that I heard in Britain was by Jackie Wilson, and it was called Repetit.
Yeah.
And it's a really sweet song, man, And from there, I just couldn't stop. So I started. My first kind of stuff of playing, although I played bass, I also played percussion.
Mm-hmm.
So my first business was in percussion, and we used to go to schools and things like that in the 60s and teach young kids, and from young kids in the primary school up to secondary school. And sometimes we'd go even to universities and teach. We used to teach about African music, history, and dance. And the first one, which was really, really serious for me, was with a gentleman called Ginger Johnson. And he had a band called the Afrikan Drummers.
Okay.
So I went there and he says to me, what do you do? So I said, well, I'm trying to play bass. He says, you want to play bass for me? I said, yes. He said, you're playing bass. So that's how I started. I didn't know anything, I didn't even know a scale, but I had friends. My cousin was a bass player. My uncle was a bass player. My mom used to play violin. So I thought, well, I better get in on the act as well. And my cousin had he's dead now, may he rest in peace. His name was Philip Lomo. And Philip had a friend called George Lee. And George Lee was a saxophone player. And he says to me, I'll teach you some things. So what he taught me was how to play melodic bass. And so I used to go around playing all this and all that. I didn't know anything. That's why I played. And so, I met another guy who was a drummer. His name was Willie Cheatham. And Willie Cheatham says, well, you have to play rhythm, man. So I said, yeah, what's that? And he started to go on the drums, boom, 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 boom. He said, play to that. So I started to play to that, and then I learned, and that's how I started. Well, years later, I joined other bands and things like that. You know, uh, all kinds of music. Was my bag. I like to play. I like jazz, but
Mm.
at the same time, I like soul. I like funk. You know, and I like what they call standards.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people like Ray Charles. You know, uh, even Diana Ross. I used to love Diana Ross when she was with the Supremes, and all Berry Gordy stuff, when we used to think about how they used to do it. I met Marvin Gaye once and I thought, wow, this guy's a great guy. And all other guys. I played with a lot of African people, so I learned how to play African music. And the problem I found out in England was that most people didn't know what African music was.
Mm.
They thought it was all about drums. But now we started to add guitars and horns and piano and all kinds of stuff. You know. One of the greatest guys I've ever met was a drummer called Remy Kabaka.
Mm-hmm.
And Remy Kabaka, from my point of view, his claim to fame, one of his claims to fame is that he taught Ginger Baker how to play drums.
Okay.
You know,
Great
and
ginger.
also and also Jim Capaldi, in those days. And all these people were around me. They were all friends of mine. And instead of just playing music and all that, we were doing other things as well, like theater, arts and all that. I formed a theater group with some other guys. We all formed together. I didn't do it on my own. There were 7 of us to start off, and we formed a theater group called Placenta Arts.
Mm.
We used to do plays and musical shows. We used to do all kinds of stuff, go to the schools and teach. I don't know if you've ever heard of Kweku Anansi. We used to tell stories about, the spider, you know, spider creeping up on the wall and all that. We tell a story about it. And in Africa, that's what we used to do. When we were kids, we used to sit there and the older people would tell us stories, and each one of them had a moral behind it. So when you're playing music, it's got to have a moral as well. And that's why I try to impart to people all the time. There's no point in saying I'm playing high life and there's no story to the song. The story will tell you what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. You know, Uh, More or less, that's what I've been doing all my life. Yeah.
That's cool. That's so cool. And we've
Then
also
I met you, and I met Grant, and
we
all
worked
these
on some
guys.
stuff together as well in the early days. The
What did you say?
I said we worked on
Huh?
some music together as well.
Yes,
The revolution will be televised.
definitely. Well, that is an answer to Gil Scott Heron
Yes.
song, which says, "Have you heard Johannesburg?"
Yeah, Joe Berg.
Right? Yes, that was about. I think it was about Sharpsville.
Mm.
He wrote that.
76.
And so, in those days, TV wasn't that much, But now the revolution will indeed be televised. In fact, it's been televised now.
You're watching
We
it
see
every
it
day
all
on
over.
TV, aren't you?
Pardon?
I said we're watching it every day on TV right now.
That's right, That's right. And people should look and see war is not the answer. You know, being with people and enjoying life and seeing people as humanity,
Mm.
we're not animals, but we tend to behave like animals. The predator and the what do you call it, the one that's going to get eaten,
The
that kind of stuff. Uh, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we tend to behave like. But that's not how humans really are. You
Survival of
know,
the fittest.
I didn't hear that.
Survival of the fittest.
No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. The reason I don't believe that is that what's his name? The guy who wrote The Survival of the Fittest. I've forgotten his
Darwin.
name now.
Is it Darwin?
Charles Darwin.
Mm.
Yeah, him, Charles Darwin. I don't believe that. I believe that when we were given the idea, you know, uh, like as an example, I can tell you that in where it comes, where it says survival of the fittest, yes and no, i.e., there's no difference between let there be light and the singularity. You know, each one of them has its own point of view, and yet each one of them tells you that at the end of the process comes humanity. So far, we ain't seen no aliens, coming from anywhere and say
Well, there's a
hi,
few, some look like aliens walking over there.
You know what I mean? We're all the same, So, I mean, anywhere you go, you'll see a human being. The closest you could say a human being is to an animal is to see the great apes. So yes, maybe Darwin is right there that we evolved from that and all that. But at the same time, that could have been one branch, and the human being could have been evolving at that time also.
So
You know?
did I ever tell you what my theory was?
No, you never did tell me.
Because I mean, obviously, I used to always listen when you guys used to talk, when we used to sit there and chill in your yard there, burning a few and listen to music. So, like, my theory is not complete here. Yeah, I always thought that because like this Charles Darwin thing of we evolved from apes and all that stuff. There's always that point that they get to where they say there's a missing link. So there's no evidence to suggest that we are actually evolved from Neanderthal or from like the last living link. So I think the aliens, man, the aliens. But when I say aliens, you see people think of little green men and UFOs and stuff, but people don't realize aliens could be like, in the Bhagavad Gita and those things, blue gods and stuff like that, or gods who come from the sky, or, I mean, all the gods that we believe in, whether it be Allah, Buddha, whatever, or Jesus, or, you know what I mean, or the Jewish God is
Yes.
someone in the sky, isn't it? So it could be an alien like in that sense. But then what I think is that these aliens, whatever came from another race or advanced civilization, they were working on these apes, these Neanderthal, and all these, Australopithecus, whatever. And,
Yes, that one, Australian.
Homo naledi, Homo, and all of those things. They found these things here, and they were working on them, genetically modifying their DNA over time, over centuries, over years, and then created us in their image. And so this human being was born.
Well, have you ever read a book by a guy called L. Ron Hubbard?
So
L.
L. Ron Hubbard is Church of Scientology, isn't he? Or is he?
Scientology.
Yeah,
That's his claim to fame. Well,
yeah.
he wrote a book called Battlefield Earth,
Mm.
in which these aliens were actually breeding us to eat us. You
Ita.
see? Yes, with the delicacy.
That's where I don't know, but that's just going a bit extreme. But yeah, I read a lot. Like there's a few of these things from Scientology that they believe in. Like, have you heard of like the Pleiadians? The constellation Pleiades. So there's this group of aliens or whatever that come from there, and there's these like seers or these women. I mean, there's this one lady who channels these beings, and they talk through her.
Yeah.
And they talk about these. I find it interesting, man. I watch, and I listen to some of these.
Well, it could be, Keenan, it could be, you see. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, if you look at the planets that we live on, and then you look at what so far they've discovered in, say, for instance, in this particular solar system we are in, right? It's very difficult to say, this It's not joined to that, and this is not joined to that. It's all a mixture of everything.
Mm.
You know, we might find. The other day I was watching a program about Titan, the moon of Saturn,
Yeah, one of the Saturn's moons. Yeah.
and the air inside the atmosphere in there is methane. Now, methane for humans is very dangerous.
Toxic.
However, it makes things grow. You see what I mean? So if, say, for instance, you get used to breathing methane, you know, and the food that they will eat will probably be completely different.
Mm.
It won't be like the ones we have. We use the methane as what they call it, things in the earth to make things grow.
Mm.
You know, like when you go to have a pool, it's full of methane. You know, and they use all that to make things grow.
Or like compost. So compost and that breaking down is the gas is methane.
Yes, yes, you know. So yes, it's quite possible. Everything is complete together in that sense. But at the other end of the day, humans are here. And humans, you can get all kinds of humans. They say Neanderthal is extinct. But you sometimes will walk down the road and you will see these guys, they look like Neanderthals. You know what I mean?
Well,
And
now with the DNA testing and all this stuff, there's I mean many Europeans, I mean not many Africans, but many Europeans have traces and percentages of Neanderthal.
yes, well, yes. According to the history book,
We wouldn't have
that's
it.
where
I know.
Neanderthals lived. The Neanderthals lived in the cold,
Mm.
you know, and we the Africans, we lived on the continent of Africa. You know, I I've always wondered why that, and usually it's because of Captain Cook, who comes and changes lots of things. But I've always wondered why that in the South Pacific, in the Pacific, you know, we have Polynesians and then we have Melanesians. You know, I've looked at Melanesians from Papua New Guinea and New Britain and all these places and all that. And they remind me of one of my friends back home.
Well,
You
I have a large percentage of their DNA because those people, my mixture of DNA when they do the percentages, a large percentage comes from that area, Melanesia, Polynesia, Asia, India, and it's basically like when I did my DNA test, it was like it kind of made sense to me because the Europeans came to South Africa, they went east, they took slaves, they came back to South Africa, they left the slaves there. The slaves mixed with all the African people and the Europeans, and there you have what you know. Well, in South Africa we call colored, but you know it might
yes,
be derogatory for
yes,
people. But mixed
yes,
race or completely mixed of whatever we are.
yes. Yeah, well, you know, the thing that's funny about all of this for me is that when I used to do some researches and all that, it's all the same, but they go with different names. Now, colored, right? I, my father was from Scotland.
Mm,
My mother is from a tribe called Akan.
mm,
Right? Now, when the mixture comes, we get what in South Africa was called colored,
mm.
right? But in Ghana, we don't call it people like my color. We don't call them colored. We call them half caste,
No,
which
Bruni,
means
Bruni.
they're like Indians. You know, the Indians call people caste
Yeah,
system,
because they
right?
have different castes in
Right?
yeah.
But, so personally, when I go home and somebody calls me, "Oh, this half caste boy," I don't get offended, but I tend to tell him. And since I do manage to speak three of their languages, I manage to tell them all, you know, in their own language. And when they see me, then they forget about this color business.
Mm.
You know, every people have that system inside of them. I
Well, so
mean,
yeah, no, carry on,
Europeans,
carry
they're different colors.
on. Mm.
You know, I've never seen a white man in my life. And I keep telling friends, you know, if you see a white man, you run. Because In Jamaica, they call them duppy. Duppy.
Yeah, the duppy, you know, duppy them. They're done dead.
You know, so you run. But I saw, I don't know if you've ever watched the science fiction uh, series called Enterprise.
Is it like
Enterprise
a spin-off of Star Trek, or is
is
it?
Star Trek, yes. But it's about the first ship that went off. So the captain is not Kirk.
Mm.
The captain is called Archer,
Okay, no, I haven't seen that. No.
Jonathan Arthur. And the actor who plays Jonathan Arthur, his name is Scott Bakula.
Mm.
Okay? To all intents and purposes, he's called a white man. He's an American, but he's called a white man. He meets a blue man. The actor who plays this blue man is also an American, but with paint on and all that, right? His name is Geoffrey Coombs.
Mm.
You know, and Geoffrey Coombs, the first time he meets Scott Bakula, he calls him pink skin. You know, and you know, Scott Bakula just looks at him and say, yeah, you know, and it's true when you look at Caucasians, they are not like the shirt, for instance, that you're wearing. You know,
Yeah.
they are more pinkish and purplish,
Reddish.
you know, all that, you know.
But then even that term, like Caucasian, like where does it come from? The Caucasus Mountains.
Well, from the Caucasus.
But are they not? They don't originate from there, man. They're not all from there.
Well, when I first came to this country in the 50s, they were called Aryans.
Even Aryans. What were Aryans? Were like were they Pakistani or like
Indian.
you know Indian?
Yes,
They were Indians.
Indians, you know. And somebody said the other day, the first person who arrived in Britain from Africa, the time then they came out of Africa to conquer the world or live in the world, you know, had after a few 100,000 years, his color changed and he had black face and everything, blue eyes and straight hair.
But do you think that like I've always thought about that whole concept about like of how living in a certain climate changes your skin color.
Yes,
But like,
yes,
it must be over like thousands and thousands of years because like
yes.
I mean how many black people live in North Europe and you don't change color, you stay black, you know, or you
Well,
how many
we
white
have,
people live in South Africa and they're still white? They don't like, you know, or in Africa and they don't, you know, they don't turn brown or anything. They stay white.
they do turn brown, but as soon as their brown doesn't stay, you know, they don't need melanin. If they needed melanin, they would change. Because when you come here, when I first arrived here, I was darker than,
The night.
you know, now I'm not that kind of color again. But when I go back to Africa and the sun beats me, you know, I turn darker skin. I come here and the cold erodes all that. It's called vitamin D, the sunshine. And that's why we in England and Europe and all that, we take tablets for it.
Yeah.
Whereas back home, we don't take tablets for it. The sun does the job, you know.
I don't know.
And
I
that's
think I'm asking because, like, I mean, for me, I've always been really fair skinned. I've always been like the white sheep of my family.
there you go.
But in England, at least, in England, I'm still a foreigner. I mean, you know, people don't see me. You know what I mean?
Well, England is made, you know, sometimes I'll tell you something that in England, you know, they don't listen to their forefathers who wrote all these books and all that. But if you read books like old texts and all that, you will find that they themselves are foreigners.
Mm.
You
Yeah,
know,
like
the British are full of foreigners.
Where do they come from? The Vikings and the Celts and all.
Exactly. You know, my name is Richardson. It's a Viking name.
So that's, yeah,
And they all went to Scotland, you know, and settled there. They became what is called Celts.
yeah.
You know, but that's the name. Richard, that's what Reichard means.
Okay.
You know, it's one of those, what they call them, Norse language, you know.
Icon, yeah.
You know, the Dutch are cousins of the Germans.
Mm.
You know, their name is called Deutsch. The Germans, Deutsch. That's the language they speak. You know, and all of this. You know, I was surprised that Strasse, you know, my Strasse, my street.
Strasse,
And
yeah, Strasse.
yeah, during those days of what they call George II, George I, and all those people, even Queen Victoria's time and all that, all they spoke was German. Prior to that, all they spoke was French. William Le Bastard, that's what he came here. He didn't speak one word of English. You know,
William the Conqueror.
William the Conqueror.
He was
But
French.
you know, to tell people that they don't want to know because they think that you're being racist. But you're not being racist. You're merely stating a fact which the British themselves know. They don't tell everybody. You know, well, in the 60s and late 60s and early 70s, the group that I mentioned earlier called Placenta Arts did all it could, and another group called Steel & Skin. But we did all we could to bring in history, the history of the world, including the blacks, into the schools. And all we got to teach Black history, they call it Black History Month now, but it only lasts for 3 weeks. And the only thing they tell you is about slavery. You know, they don't tell you about people like Washington Carver, who without Washington Carver, Henry Ford of Ford Motors wouldn't have a car in the road. You know, Washington Carver was a biologist, and from a peanut, he got over 100 different things from a peanut, from oil to all kinds of other things, in which he gave to Henry Ford. And all Henry Ford gave to him was a university called the Washington Carver University, only for blacks to go to. And yet, no one talks about that. In NASA, I was in Ghana, and a man got an award for his work on the space shuttle from Ghana. But nobody talks about him. No one says a word about him. It's all the Caucasian who went there and went here and there. That's not true at all. You know,
I think
if you look deep,
that's a good, good time to bring up my next point that I wanted to talk about, which was I just wanted you to like talk a little bit about your experience of growing up as Black or half caste or whatever in Britain from the 50s and 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, you know what I mean?
What do you mean? You know, I grew up in 2 different places, you know. There's a record where you should listen to, man. It's by a guy called Chico Hamilton, and it's called Man from 2 Worlds.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah, me.
We grew up half of the time in Africa and the other half of the time in Europe. You know, it's 2 different ways, but the same. That's how I see it. You know, when I was a kid in Africa, in the Gold Coast, you know, they used to tease me because of the color of my skin. And I used to get annoyed, and I was always fighting. You know, and then I came here. The first day I came here, you know, the second day my uncle I came to stay with, he says to me, go out and play. I walked out there. I remember the date as well because it was funny. February the 3rd, 1956. He says, go out and play. I went out. The snow was about one meter and something deep. The guy from next door came out. He says, African boy, where's your tail? The next minute, he was in the snow. You know, he was in the snow and I was shoving the snow down his throat. You know, I've been fighting all my life. All my life. That's why the color of my skin. But
that's why we're very similar, because I mean,
black lives do matter, but also white lives matter as well. You
just
know,
1 second. I just want to say, Jeff, You know the background noise there. You must just let Jemima know that I'm recording this, so everything she's saying is gonna come through on the recording. Yeah, because it's.
Let me tell her. Let me tell her. Jemima, Jemima, everything you're saying is going to be real. Problem.
I'm recording it.
I know that's good. You know, that's good. You see, the way language she's speaking, so different language again, you know, and all that. And that's what is happening to me. That's what is more important. When you go out there, don't look at the color of a person. Listen to what they're saying, you know. And you hardly hear English being spoken these days. Everybody comes from all over the world, and they're all here and adding. So the culture, the great big melting pot, is becoming very, very interesting. You know? But you have those, like, for instance, the Romans used to say paganos, which became pagans. Right? And a lot of people thought being a pagan meant you didn't worship God. And that. What it means is countryside, man. You know, you come from the countryside, you know, so you're a bumpkin. You know, you don't know anything. That's what it meant. But today it's different. Everybody says pagan means you're a heathen. No, man. You know, life is very short. And so if you live it to the full and you don't tread on anybody's toes, you will enjoy the life.
I think, you see, for me, I experienced a lot of that as well. Like, so growing up in Joburg, when you live in a colored neighborhood, so colored people in South Africa are generally like, say your complexion, like brown, yeah. So, but then you obviously get loads of exceptions, really fair ones and really dark ones. So for me, being really fair, I used to get teased because I'm too white. And then also because I had Afro hair, I'd get teased because I had Afro hair. But that is, that's the thing. When I came to London, I actually felt more at ease because of the multiculturalism, you know, and the cosmopolitan nature of London, you know, and more people would see me as Keenan rather than, especially because colored people have a very distinct accent. Like in South Africa, the colored accent is like the Scouse accent over here. Like not many people, it's loud and it's very, people don't like our accent that much. So people don't really, you know, and even with us, with colored people, when they talk to their bosses and stuff, they'll be like, they'll put on like a sweeter accent or something. You know what I mean? They'll talk nicely and talk proper English or whatever. They're talking to like someone in authority.
Well, you should have met my mother. If you meet my mother, if you had met my mother, she would have said to you, you know, Keenan, grammatical English, much more important than this colloquial rubbish. According to her, you know, you had to speak it correctly.
Correct.
Because those who came there, you know, with their white shirts and their, you know, the hats that they used to wear, I said no. They come and they came there. That's how they used to speak, you know. Definitely. And everybody thought that that's how all Englishmen spoke. When you went to Liverpool, you hear that Buri Ila.
You're right, mate. You're right, Keenan. Just come over from Wales, like on the other side of the Maisie, like.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
When I first came here, I like it. I actually had to listen properly to people because I lived also in Liverpool and Manchester for like a year when I first came here, and like I couldn't understand. Actually, I was in Scotland first, and I couldn't understand a word they were saying. Because we watch on TV, and obviously it's maybe not as like strong or whatever. But when you come here, even like East Enders and you know people from the East End and stuff, and you hear them talk.
You know, English.
What is English? You all right, guys?
That's how they go. I. What does that mean?
So yeah, it's like English. What is English?
So that's what my old lady used to say. Speak the language properly. And then if you're going to learn how to speak Italian, speak that one also properly. And it's true, really, it's true. If you make it up, it means to say you're just adding this, that, and it's colorful, you know. But if no one understands you, they never get near you, they never do anything with you, you know. White people always used to say Africans, their food smell.
Mm.
And yet, the day that in the 50s, well, in fact, even earlier than the 50s, my uncle was here in the 30s, and he would tell you the day that the jollof rice, they had the jollof rice, they couldn't stop knocking on the door. You know? How did you make that? Can you show me? And they said, no, no, no. You know,
Yeah, well, now
this
it's
is
one
what,
of the biggest things here. Jollof rice, you know, Caribbean food, jerk chicken and
yeah,
rice.
yes,
Curry
yes.
was like the number one dish here, isn't it? Like
Vindaloo. That's what they love with a glass of
a pint.
well, in my day as a young man in Britain, lager was not tolerated at all.
Okay.
It was black and tan, is what they called it. So
Okay.
it was pale ale and a bit of Guinness in it,
Uh,
and you drank that.
that don't.
But then the lager took over. So you even have lager louts.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
know all about those lager lots.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Came in the
My day, my day, every Saturday and Sunday, you'd have two sets of white guys going all the way to Brighton. You know what they're going to do? Form two lines and beat the hell out of each other.
oh, the mods and the
The
what
mods
mods
and the rockers.
and the rockers, yes.
Yes. You know, and what was that all about? You know,
Rafinha.
rubbish. They didn't have anything to do. So they'd go into the cinema, they watch Tony Curtis with his curl hair like that, and everybody wanted to be like him. Then they'd watch James Dean, and everybody wanted to be like him. You know? Whereas it's a farm. It's not real life, you know. But they did because they sit on the motor. There's a film called Easy Rider. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I think I've heard of it,
Mm.
but I don't think I've seen it now.
And Easy Rider was like everybody wanted, therefore, a motorbike. Now it's the rockers. But then there was another film where they used Vespas, you know,
Wasn't it
those kind of.
Quadrophenia or something?
Some I can't remember the name of it.
Made by who was Quadrophenia by? It was one of these bands back in the 70s as well.
You know, and that's what they do. They live by things they see on the big screen or in the music, you know, this and that, and they live by that. But all that is fantasy. Real life, oh, you know, Fort Capri, what is it, Capri? My goodness, you want to see them all. But that was the fun thing about all that was that they were now getting to know that these people who live abroad were savages. You understand? Because in the beginning, when it came to, I once told a Jamaican guy I met in a castle in Elmina in Ghana, and the guy was crying because they said this is the door of no return. They were explaining to them. It is where they took all the slaves and all that. And he started to say, "You people sold us. You people did this." And I said to him, "You know, my friend, if you're in your village and you hear and it's a cannon ball like that landed in your village and it kills, 10 people or so. And where did that ball come from? 6 miles away. What is your bow and arrow going to go? How far do you think your bow and arrow is going to go?" And he stood there and looked at me. He says, "We never think of that, I said, "Well, you should, because that's how they did. The Portuguese came, they came just to trade, ended up owning the damn place. Right? The Dutch came, they ended up owning the damn place. All with what? Boom! And you're sitting there and you hear, you got no gun, you only got a bow and arrow. It's going nowhere, it falls into the water. And they're sitting in their ships. You understand what I mean? Now, the day when the African headed by a woman called Ya Asantwa in the Midlands of the country, right? Picked up one of those guns where you shove down and you put the gunpowder in the bullet, right? And learned how to fire it. They beat the British in the war. They had 3 wars with these people called the Ashantis, and the Ashantis beat them 3 times. They only conquered the Ashantis in 1906. Can you imagine that? From 13 something to 1906 before they conquered the Midlands of that country.
Well, they were saying even in South Africa, the San, the Khoisan, the Bushmen, the first wars they won. They did win a few wars against the Dutch when they came.
There's a one called Setawayo, the chief, right? And he let them go at the rocks drift. The place is called.
Oh yeah, that's a bit later.
Let them go.
That was when the British were fighting the Zulus and that.
Yes, you know, all these things. There's another one in Burkina Faso. The woman, she took on the French. Her name is Ya Abba. She took on the French and shipped them left, right, and center. There was another one in Zimbabwe. We didn't sit down and get, but the weapons, we didn't have the weapons like that, you know. And that's why I want history to be taught in school, but not the history, just the history of the British Empire. You know, there's been empires all over the damn place, you know. So bring them all in and show how the world is. The world wasn't born yesterday. It was born thousands, millions of years ago. And people have been here for that kind of time. And they will be here, you know, when the sun blows up, and then we'll all go. Or maybe by then we'll all be Martians.
So anyway, Jeff, man, I mean, we've had a really good conversation. I
enjoyed that, man.
Thank you for
I enjoyed that.
Thank
you for having me on, man.
That's cool, man. This is my first episode. It's called The Other Side of the Sun. Obviously, you know me as the Sun Child. That name has evolved into solarkidd, and that's
solarkidd. Yes, it's still the sun, solar, sun.
Child of the sun, you know, child of light, child of love. But
yes, man.
yeah, it's been really good to see you as well, face to face, and have a chat.
Me too. To see you. Lovely.
We'll.
My regards to the family.
I will, you too. We will hook up once the lockdown is a bit more.
Yes.
The kids. And
we'll see each other.
Yeah.
We'll make an effort at least to see each other. Yes? And keep playing, man.
Yeah, man. You know me. I'll keep practicing. You see my baby over there in the background.
Okay.
I'm practicing.
Nice to see you. Okay, we're talking with her.
But Jeff, Big Daddy G, quick.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Adios.
There's gonna be some music online of yours soon. We're gonna get that up there on SoundCloud so people can check it out.
Okay. Well, I've got a few on what's his name? SoundCloud.
Yeah. What's the name?
There's one called Table Manners.
Yeah.
Yes. If you go there and check it, Table Manners, and you know that song.
Under what name?
Under Kweksons, Geoffrey Richardson.
Let's just check it.
He put it on. Natasha put it on for me. Yeah. And there's that other one. Remember David's song? You know, what's a kid supposed to do? A kid and his food.
Oh, is that the one with Niles and?
No, that's a different one. The one with Niles is a different one. This one is about a kid who wants food to eat and he gets stopped by the police.
Yeah, I've got it here. I've got your link here, so I will post it up for people to see the Table Manners one.
Okay.
And then people can and then when I see you, we'll post some more up so people can hear your music.
Yes. Nice one, right?
We'll get it out.
Nice one, eh?
So bless, bro. Thank you so much.
Well.
Keep well.
And, peace and love, okay?
Peace and love.
Adios, amigo.
Ciao, bye.